Then the woman left her water jar and returned to the city. There's a big difference, I believe, between forgetting something and leaving something behind. It may not seem too different at first, and certainly we have used these terms interchangeably, I'm sure, but there is a difference. For example, we might go to a store and leave our purse or wallet or debit card on the checkout counter. And if we're lucky, they'll point it out to us or send someone after us, running after us out the store and say, "Here, you forgot this." Or at the grocery store, you may forget to pick up one of your bags, which I do quite often, especially at a place like Walmart when they got the little spinner thing with the bags on it, because inevitably I won't check it and I'll leave one there. And then you get home and realize you forgot a bag, and of course, it's the bag that has the one thing you went to the store to get in the first place. Maybe you left something at home. Maybe it even happened this morning as you were coming to church. Maybe you forgot directions. You were going somewhere and forgot how to go. We can forget lots of things. Maybe you were hoping after that long gospel that I would forget to preach a sermon. I've not. I didn't. We can forget lots of things. We can give plenty of examples of that. But we can also leave things behind. And this, to me, is quite different, because it suggests that we're taking a new direction in our lives. We make a decision to change something about us, and we turn and we go a different way, leaving behind what we don't need. And this may be something like giving up smoking or other addictive habits. It may be something like leaving behind old ways of doing things and finding new, more efficient ways of doing things. Maybe it's trying to live a healthier lifestyle, eating better, exercising, taking better care of your body and mind or spirit. This is Lent, so it's a good time to think about those things. And in that case, what do we leave behind? Well, we leave behind extra weight we don't need. We leave behind stress we don't need. We leave behind worries we don't need. But sometimes, once we are used to living a certain way, we may not even realize we left something behind, because we have replaced whatever that need was with something better and more fulfilling. Then the woman left her water jar and returned to the city. Today we hear a little of both of these things in our reading, forgetting and leaving behind. The Israelites forget God again, and the Samaritan woman leaves behind her old life in order to live into a new one. Both stories center around two main things: water and faith. How one can put their needs ahead of faith, or how faith overcomes their physical needs. One of the classes I took this past summer at Swanee had to do with internalizing symbols. And one of the biggest and I would say most popular symbols throughout Scripture is water. And a well is a symbol of water, isn't it? And it can go either way. Either the well can be the source of water and it's full and it's abundant and that's good, or the well can be dry, which means there is no water. Water can be abundant or it can be scarce. Water can help us to live, but water can also be destructive. Water in baptism can give us new life. Water and the well is one of those symbols that we can easily internalize and understand. In our gospel today, it is a scandalous story, and it may not sound scandalous to us, but if you were a listener in the first century, it would have been very scandalous to hear it. Jesus, the Christ, the Messiah, a Jew. Not only is he risking being unclean by talking to a Samaritan, but this particular Samaritan is a woman, which was forbidden to speak with her. And this woman has really three things going against her. One, being a Samaritan, being a woman, but also being an exile in her own community. And we know that because we're told she goes to the well at noon. Most people would go to draw water early in the morning in order to bring it back and have it for the day's needs. She can't do that because she's been exiled for living her life the way she does. We're not told a whole lot about that. So she has to go later in the day. And Jesus is there because he's tired, showing us the human side of Jesus. He simply wants something to drink, but it's not a coincidence that Jesus is there at that well at that time to meet this woman. Jesus goes to this well, the woman comes, and Jesus asks her for a drink. And she is shocked, one, that the man, a Jew, would even speak to her, let alone ask to drink out of her cup, to share a common cup. Now, we already know the history between Jews and Samaritans. So when we're told that he stops in Samaria, we know something's going to happen. There's going to be a lesson here. The Jews and the Samaritans don't get along. They argue about where to worship, and we hear some of that in the story. The Jews consider the Samaritans unclean. The Samaritans didn't like the contempt they received from the Jews, and there's no love lost there. And to some people it may not seem that scandalous, but think about the story out of Luke's Gospel of the Good Samaritan, of the man who gets robbed and beaten, and the one who comes to help him is not an Israelite, as people would think. It's a Samaritan. It's the exact opposite of what you would think was going to happen. But people might hear that story and say, well, that's okay, that's just a story, it's not real people, so it didn't really happen. But here, Jesus is standing, talking to a woman. It's live, and it's happening. Even the disciples were worried about it when they come back and see Jesus talking to her. Jesus makes a point that sometimes we have to go out of our way to do things that aren't comfortable. We have to go out of our way to see people we don't normally want to see. Or we might not see anyway because we don't count them in the same way we count other people. Jesus sees this woman, he speaks to this woman, and he makes a decision that his reach goes beyond just the Israelites. It goes beyond just the house of Israel. Maybe there are other people. Maybe there are others who can hear his word and hear his message and come to believe. And he tells the woman, there will come a day where it doesn't matter if we worship in Jerusalem or if we worship here at Mount Gerizim. If we worship God in spirit and truth, that is true worship. And that can take place anywhere. And he says, you too are a child of God. And what Jesus does right there is he breaks down those walls. He breaks down those barriers that separate us. He says, you too, even you, a woman, a Samaritan, an exile in your own community, even you are worthy of God's love. Even you are a child of God. And he puts her on equal footing with him, with Jesus. And Jesus takes that image of the well and he claims it for himself. You come and draw water, but you're going to run out of that water and you're going to be thirsty again. You're going to have to come back, but what I can give you is living water that will never go away. And with this living water, you will never be thirsty. And she says, give me that water. And it's in the vocative. It's a command. Give me that water. I want it. And she says, I know that Messiah is coming. And Jesus says, I am he. And then to me, what's the most significant part of this whole story, she leaves the water jar behind and returns to the city. She doesn't forget the water jar. She doesn't forget why she's there. She's found something even better. And she leaves it behind to go on with her life, to look forward to the hope of her calling. That's what Jesus gives her. He gives her hope. And she runs back to the city, back to the people who exiled her in the first place. And she says, I have found the Messiah. Come and see. Here's a man who told me everything I've ever done. And they come. The Samaritans come to see the Jewish man who is the Messiah. He breaks down those walls. He breaks down those barriers. And she breaks down those barriers by going back to the city. And they come even to the point that Jesus and his disciples stay for 2 more days. Many of the Samaritans come to believe and have faith. And have faith. Faith that we don't see in the Israelites in our Old Testament reading. Faith that's not there because they're angry with God, because God's not giving them what they want. And Moses is frustrated and he says, what am I to do with these people? God says, give them water. Well, that's fine. It'll satisfy their needs, but then they'll want something else. What they don't see is the hope that Jesus gives that woman that day. I am the living water. I can give you something that will sustain you for your life. And she has faith, and she has hope in that faith, and she believes. We are called in the same way to have that faith. We are called in the same way to take that living water that Jesus gives us. We are called in the same way to leave our water jar or whatever it is in our life behind, so that we can go and be a witness to Christ and bring others to Him, and to live off of that well inside of Jesus. We are called to break down those walls, to look past our differences, and to see everyone for who they are, a child of God, and someone worthy of love.